Hello everybody, I'm Martin. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Today we're finally going to get to something I've been putting off for quite a while, and that's finally unlocking the Extreme Reactors and building a base reactor. Now, as this says, there's no actual chapter, it's just unlocking this, because we need Cyanite, Blutonium, Ludicrite, and then yada yada. But it's also because it's blocking Draconic Evolution, the only real other chapter I have left before we get into bragging rights. Yes, I know Psy is here, but Psy also doesn't have a chapter and is of extremely dubious use in this pack. But the core of what we need is to be able to make Blutonium long term, because Blutonium ingots are used in ultimate crafting. And unlike normal Blutonium, which normally it's just reprocessed cyanite from spent fuel rods inside an Extreme Reactor, there's no machine to process it. You pretty much have to use this recipe to create a block of it, which is a bunch of cyanite, an empowered Palace Crystal, which isn't hard, mana-infused metal, which isn't hard, cobalt, which isn't hard, and then a bunch of plutonium. The plutonium might be hard, except, well, we've already got my IC2 reactor down those stairs over there producing plutonium anyways. And if push comes to shove, you can make plutonium inside the replicator, and we now have UU matter getting pumped out at a decent rate. It's pretty expensive, but it is doable if we need it. We shouldn't, though, where we've got plenty of plutonium as it is. But what we don't have is cyanite. So that brings us to needing to open up the chapter. And to open up the chapter, we need to make the reactor controller. And the reactor controller is all easy to make stuff. That said, if we take a look at this recipe, this is not the normal crafting table. This is the extended crafting table, which is the very start of the bragging rights section for extended crafting all the way up to the ultimate table. If we look in here at the options, you can see that it builds up over time and ultimately has a bunch of these singularities here, which is a large part of what the endgame goal for the bragging section is. That said, the basics table is not hard to make at all. It starts with the black iron slate, which is just 2 black iron ingots, which is just tough alloy smelted together with a block of invar. I've already got all that animated. I've actually got all of the pieces to make the basic crafting table automated already. Because from there, it's just iron and luminescence, which is just a bunch of easy stuff. And then you take that and combine it with another black iron ingot. So all of that's done. I've already gone and made the table. So I guess we can just put it down like right here for now and call it good. And this is the part where I realize I've misread these components. While we have all of them, thankfully, it's the fission controller and casings for nuclear craft, which is actually kind of complicated to make. I mean, none of it's really outside our means, but I didn't realize I would have to have them. Thankfully, we've gotten a bunch out of loot chests, so none of this is a problem. So now we can just slap that together and finally close this out. And notice that to unlock Draconic Evolution, we need a plutonium ingot. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So it's a good thing we're doing this. Now that said, we do need a few other items to make the reactor. We need 2 access ports to do input and output of the uranium and the cyanite. We need a bunch of fuel rods. We need some control rods to go over them. And then we need a power tap to be able to extract power out of it. We also need a ton of reactor casing, which isn't too bad to make. Honestly, it's just steel and graphite, which is just coal in a smelter, as well as these casings, which are a bit harder to make. But we've gotten a few hundred of these from loot chests, so I think I'm just going to make a smallish reactor. Because while doing this, I also realized one of the reasons I was putting this up is, like, if I'm going to do an episode on Extreme Reactors, I'm going to do a big one. And I'm going to make it super efficient. And I'm going to attach a steam turbine to it to get super amounts of power. And then I had a deep thoughts moment and realized I don't need the power. What I need is cyanite. So we're just going to make a lazy, inefficient one. So let's get on that. Alright, so to be clear, I'm going to build this in a compact machine strictly for space reasons. As far as I'm aware, unlike the Industrial Craft 2 one, this one should work fine here. And unlike the Nuclear Crafter Mechanism ones, cannot explode. If you screw things up on the internals of this, the worst thing that happens is you burn more uranium. It just lowers the efficiency of it. It doesn't actually explode. These have actually been pretty safe in the past. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. It's been a while though. If you explode your base, send me a video because I'm just going to laugh. Alright, so just to give you an idea of how these are built, I'm building a 7x7. You can build any size cube that you want up to, I don't know, some ridiculously large size. Ideally, you want to keep them within a chunk, which is another reason why I've got it on a compact machine. This means it will all be in the same chunk and chunk loaded all at the same time, so I don't have to worry about materials and that causing issues with that. but you just build out a cube like this. We're going to fill in the sides and we'll fill in the top when we get to putting the control rods in. But you leave the interior empty other than what you want in for the actual fuel rods and for coolant. So let me fill in a bit more and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, you would think before I start a build like this I could do some basic math and realize how much plating I need, but I vastly underestimated it. So I've got more cooking right now, but I figure while that's going on, I can at least start laying out the inside of this, or at least the part that doesn't involve coolant. So what you need to do on the inside are lay out fuel rods, and I'm going to put them in an X pattern, but you can lay them out however you want realistically. There's a whole bunch of different patterns for this that you can use, but I'm just going for one that I know that works and isn't necessarily the world's most efficient, but generally spacing them out like this is more efficient than not. I'm also going to be putting graphite blocks in between them. As you can see, it basically acts as an amplifier, but increases heat. But we'll deal with the heat in a minute. But I'm going to screw that one up. I'm also going to realize I also don't have enough graphite blocks in here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm just going to space them out like this, and we're going to do this pattern all the way up to the top. Turns out that I actually can do math, at least on the graphite route. So this is all laid out now. Coming up here on top of the reactor, you can see that it's just laid out in a big, huge rectangle that goes all the way up to almost the top. Once we're at the top here, we can add the reactor control rods, which just go on top of the fuel rods. And then the rest of this gets filled in with plating. Okay, and to finish out the outer frame of this, you just need to add in the reactor controller, the access ports, and your power tap. The access ports have an inlet and an outlet mode to import or export things. You just toggle that way to determine what you want. You can also use reactor glass to line the outside. I believe the outer frame has to be casings, but I don't think the center has to. Now we need to add the coolant though. Now there's a lot of things you can use for coolant, especially like water, especially if you want an actively cooled reactor, if you want to run a steam turbine. In our case, I'm going to be using Resonant Ender, which is the second best one. I could have used gelid cryothium, but I don't need it to be that efficient. This is probably already going to make it more efficient than I want it to be. And I just didn't want to make the cryothium. I might even have it automated, and I just don't want to deal with it. Melting down ender pearls is easier, but you just put it in like any other liquid. And in the case of Resonant Ender, get teleported out if you accidentally touch it. Alright, now that we've got this filled up with Resonant Ender, we just need to cap off the rest of the roof. And now you can see the multi-block auto-completed as soon as I place the last block. So now we have a working reactor in theory. We come down to the front and activate the controller. You can see that everything's here and it's currently turned off. We put some uranium into the input and load it up and turn on the reactor. You can see that it starts powering up and heating up, and it starts creating power. Until it properly heats up to whatever its max heat is going to be, we won't have it at its full power rate, so I don't know what it's going to be for a little bit here, but it looks like it's settling in at about 22,000 power. But the battery's also full, and I don't have fuel coming in or being automatically pulled out right now, so we probably should put some piping in here and probably give it a source of uranium, huh? Okay, so the wiring's a bit clunky, but I added a redstone furnace that's sitting on top of a tunnel that's taking in uranium more. We're doubling it into uranium ingots here using the flux anodizer add-on. I don't really need to triple or anything because I don't need that many ingots, I don't think. If it becomes an issue, I just need to make more uranium ore, not really tripling it, I think. Those are getting piped into here. This is now kept up all the time. This seems to be constantly kicking out about 35-ish thousand power, which isn't shabby at all. And that's getting kicked out to an energy cell outside. This is pulling out the cyanite and dumping that into our storage now. I think the only thing I have left to do now is wire up that energy cell on the outside over to my matter fabricator and just pump all this power into it permanently, because I really want this running the full time. I probably should do the same with my IC2 reactor. This is actually outside, not far away from where I have that. So I can probably just combine them into a single power cable and run that over there instead. Because we really want plutonium and cyanite being made pretty much all the time now. But I can do that on my own time. That doesn't require you guys. You don't need to see me laying pipe down in a really boring fashion. So, as always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.